Hers was the kind of heart that loved fully, purely, without fear. Her name was Olivia, and she believed in the future, believed in love, believed in Theodore. For a long time, he was everything she asked God for: a companion, a friend, a man she imagined standing beside her for the rest of her life. But life does not always follow the plans we draw inside our chest. Everything began to collapse the day Theodore chose someone else. Another promise, another sparkle, another path. For Olivia, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath her feet. She held the door frame as if trying to hold herself together, and failed. Words vanished. Her voice disappeared, and the world became small and painfully quiet, as if her heart had been left outside in the cold. This is the point where many stories end. But redeemed heart stories never end where pain begins. Because when life breaks, God rebuilds. When human love fails, divine love directs. And when someone walks away, God prepares the return, even when no one can see it forming in the unseen. The truth is, Theodore had no idea that the path he chose that day was the same path that would eventually lead him back to where he never should have left. He thought he was running toward a brighter future, but in reality, he was walking straight toward the end of himself. And God would allow the fall, not out of cruelty, but out of purpose. Meanwhile, Olivia, alone in her room, cried softly. Not just because she lost a man, but because she lost herself somewhere in the process. And in the quiet of her pain, she managed to whisper only 3 words. God, hold me. And he did. What no one could see, not Theodore, not Olivia, was that God was already writing a reunion. Not the predictable romantic kind, but a reunion born from purpose, restoration, genuine repentance, and a love that exists only when a heart is shattered and rebuilt by the hands of the Creator himself. And before we continue this story, if you believe God still writes new beginnings, subscribe to the channel now, because what happens next will touch you deeply. Now take a deep breath, because destiny is approaching. And when God decides to restore, nothing can stop him. Olivia had always believed that love, when sincere, was a shelter, a quiet place where souls rested and hearts found peace. For months, she felt that safety with Theodore, trusting every word he spoke. But that morning, something in the air felt heavier than usual. A silence lingered that didn't belong there. She stood in the small kitchen of her apartment, preparing coffee for both of them. The routine had always been comforting, almost sacred. But Theodore didn't sit in his usual place, nor did he smile. Instead, he remained standing, arms crossed, eyes distant. Olivia felt her heartbeat shift. When he finally spoke, his voice lacked its familiar warmth. He didn't soften his tone, didn't try to prepare her. He simply said he needed a different life and someone who could keep up. The words were sharp, cold, like metal dropped on stone. Olivia froze, unable to breathe. She tried to ask what changed, what she had done wrong. Theodore dismissed the questions with a shrug of indifference. He said he had met someone new, someone exciting. The word felt like a slap, echoing in her ribs. Her hands trembled around the coffee cup. Olivia searched his eyes, looking for the man she once knew. But he had already gone somewhere she couldn't follow. The tenderness she loved had been replaced by impatience. He seemed eager to leave, eager to end everything. That eagerness hurt more than the betrayal itself. Theodore stepped toward the door, grabbing the jacket she bought him. Olivia felt her knees weaken as she tried to hold herself upright. She whispered his name, barely audible, hoping he would turn back. He paused for a fraction of a second, but didn't. He walked out, closing the door with a soft but devastating click. The moment the door closed, the world seemed to fold inward. The apartment felt too quiet, too still, too empty without him. Olivia placed her hand over her chest as if trying to hold her heart in place. Tears finally escaped, hot and uncontrollable. She sank onto the kitchen floor, unable to contain the ache. Her mind replayed the breakup again and again. Every word he said reverberated like a cruel echo. She wondered if she had been too soft, too simple, too hopeful. She wondered if love had blinded her. She wondered why she wasn't enough. Hours passed, though time felt meaningless. Olivia sat by the window, watching the sky shift from blue to gray. Her reflection looked unfamiliar, tired, wounded, lost. She placed her forehead on the cold glass, letting the chill ground her, and in the stillness, she whispered, "God, why?" The silence that followed was deep and heavy, not a silence of abandonment, but one of pause. A silence where heaven listens before it responds. Olivia didn't understand that yet. She only felt the weight of her brokenness. She tried calling her best friend, but her voice cracked before she could speak. Instead, she sent a single text. He left. 2 minutes later came the reply, "I'm coming." But even knowing help was on the way didn't soothe the ache. Heartbreak has a way of isolating even the strongest. Olivia walked into her bedroom, the place where they once planned a future. The pillows still carried the subtle scent of him. She sat at the edge of the bed and exhaled shakily. Grief washed through her like a cold tide. She wrapped her arms around herself for warmth. She picked up the small journal where she wrote prayers. Most of the pages were filled with hope and gratitude. Tonight, she wrote through blurry tears, "Lord, I don't understand." Her handwriting trembled, ink smudging. "Give me strength to breathe." The words felt simple, but they held every part of her soul. For the first time, she let herself cry without stopping. She cried for the love she lost, for the future that vanished. She cried for the pieces of herself she didn't know how to gather. Her tears felt like a release she had kept bottled for too long. As the night deepened, a strange calm settled around her. Not comfort, just quiet. The kind of quiet that precedes the first steps of healing. A quiet that whispered, "This is not the end." Olivia didn't believe it yet, but heaven had already begun. Because while her world seemed to be collapsing, God was rearranging pieces she couldn't see. He was closing a door that led to destruction, and preparing a path that would lead to redemption. A path she never imagined possible. Meanwhile, somewhere across the city, Theodore wasn't as certain as he pretended to be. Doubt had begun to whisper at the edges of his pride. He tried to ignore it, but it followed him like a shadow. A shadow he couldn't escape. But Olivia didn't know any of that. Not yet. All she knew was the heaviness in her chest and the ache in her bones. She curled beneath the blanket, eyes swollen, heart fragile. And with her last ounce of strength, she whispered again, "God, stay with me tonight." Theodore believed that leaving Olivia would open the door to a brighter life. He imagined excitement, success, and admiration waiting for him. He convinced himself the decision was logical, even necessary. But the moment he stepped into his new reality, something felt off. A quiet discomfort settled inside him like a warning he refused to hear. The woman he chose, Amelia, was everything the world praised. Charming, ambitious, magnetic in a way that impressed others. At first, he mistook her attention for affection, her confidence for depth, her boldness for truth. For a while, Theodore forced himself to believe he had upgraded his life. He attended events, smiled for pictures, played along with her polished world. People envied him, calling them the perfect match. But beneath the surface of every compliment was an emptiness he couldn't name. A hollow echo that grew louder by the day. Amelia loved being admired, not loving in return. Her affection shifted depending on how much attention she received. Theodore noticed the way her eyes wandered when he spoke. She was with him, but never truly with him, and he felt that difference like a cold draft across his soul. Whenever he tried to open up or share something meaningful, she dismissed it. "Don't be dramatic," she'd say with a laugh that cut deeper than she realized. He swallowed his words, his emotions, his fears. Piece by piece, he muted himself to keep the peace. But silence weighs heavy on a heart trying to survive. Late at night, lying awake beside her, Theodore felt the first sting of regret. Not regret for choosing her, not yet, but regret for the harshness with which he left Olivia. He remembered Olivia's trembling voice, her pleading eyes. That memory haunted him like a shadow he couldn't outrun. Still, Theodore pushed the guilt aside. He told himself Olivia would get over it, that she was strong enough to move on. But the truth was simpler and far more painful. He didn't want to admit he'd broken something irreplaceable. As the days passed, Amelia's true colors sharpened. She became frustrated with him easily, criticizing small things. His clothes, his tone, even the way he breathed during arguments. She grew impatient with anything imperfect, including him. Theodore tried to ignore the tension building between them, but he couldn't ignore the loneliness creeping into his chest. It was a loneliness that Amelia's beauty couldn't touch, a loneliness that whispered a single name, Olivia. He found himself thinking of her unexpectedly, her quiet kindness, her peaceful presence, her ability to love without demanding applause. The contrast became painful. One afternoon, while Amelia was scrolling through her phone, he asked softly, "Do you ever think about what truly matters?" She barely glanced up. "Of course," she said. "Status, connections, future plans." Theodore felt something inside him shatter. He realized Amelia cared more about what people saw than what people felt. More about being admired than being known. More about being chosen than choosing Deverdad. And for the first time, Theodore saw just how shallow the foundation truly was. It felt like standing on glass. Beautiful, but fragile. Theodore's friends began to notice the change in him. He wasn't as confident, nor as present. His laughter sounded rehearsed, not real. He brushed off their concerns, but they lingered. Truth is hard to hide for long. As the weeks turned into months, the glamour faded. Arguments became frequent, sharp, exhausting. Amelia accused him of being boring, too sentimental, too slow. Theodore felt his self-worth slipping through his fingers. He wondered how he'd become someone so small. One night, after yet another argument, Theodore sat alone in his car. The city lights blurred through the windshield as his vision dimmed with tears he refused to shed. His hands trembled on the steering wheel. He whispered, "What am I doing?" For the first time in years, he felt genuinely lost. He thought of Olivia again, this time with a weight that nearly broke him. Not out of longing, but out of remorse. He remembered how she prayed before sleeping, how she smiled softly at him, how she made him feel seen, not showcased. He had traded peace for noise, love for applause. A realization struck him with painful clarity. He wasn't happy. Not with Amelia. Not with the life he had chosen. Not with himself. But Theodore wasn't ready to face that truth. Not yet. So he swallowed the pain, wiped his eyes and drove away, ignoring the quiet tug of heaven trying to pull him back, ignoring the ache in his chest that whispered, "You left the one who actually loved you." Days turned into weeks, and the ache inside Olivia didn't disappear, but it changed. It no longer felt like a wound gushing pain, but like a quiet bruise beneath the surface, the kind that hurt when touched, yet slowly faded. She woke up one morning realizing she was tired of surviving. She wanted to breathe again. She began with something simple, opening the blinds. Sunlight filled her living room, warm and soft. It painted her walls with hope she didn't yet feel. But hope has a way of entering before permission is given. Olivia let the light stay. Her best friend Clara visited often. Clara didn't ask forcing questions nor offer empty advice. She simply sat with Olivia, sometimes in silence, sometimes in prayer. Their quiet moments felt like small stitches to a torn heart. Healing rarely begins loudly. It begins like this. One afternoon, Clara invited her back to church. Olivia hesitated. She didn't want people seeing her broken. But Clara reminded her gently, "Church is a hospital, not a stage." Those words settled deep inside Olivia's chest. Eventually, she whispered, "Okay, I'll go." The church felt different than she remembered. The lights were dim, the music tender, the air warm with something heavenly. As worship began, Olivia stood still, arms crossed as if protecting herself. But slowly, her guard lowered with every lyric. Her heart recognized something her mind had forgotten. She was loved. When the pastor spoke about God rebuilding what life destroys, Olivia felt her breath catch. His words weren't general. They felt personal, surgical, intentional. Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. Healing had begun. The days that followed were not perfect, but they were different. Olivia began journaling again, not about heartbreak, but about restoration. She wrote small prayers, fragile but sincere. "Lord, help me see myself like you see me." Heaven always hears prayers like that. She started taking walks in the evenings. The cool breeze felt like a balm to her spirit. She listened to worship songs, letting every melody wash her soul. She breathed deeper. She cried less. Slowly, Olivia returned to dreams she had abandoned. She re-enrolled in the online course she paused months earlier. She applied for a new job opportunity she had been afraid to try for. Each step felt shaky but brave. It was as if God whispered, "Forward, my daughter." Her smile didn't come back all at once. It returned in fragments. Soft, hesitant, almost shy. Clara noticed before Olivia did. "You're glowing again," she said with a knowing grin. Olivia laughed for the first time in a long while. Of course, some nights were harder. Some memories still hurt like fresh bruises. Sometimes she missed the version of Theodore she thought existed. But healing doesn't erase memories. It redeems them. And Olivia began to trust God with even her painful ones. She stopped checking Theodore's social media, stopped wondering who he was with, stopped analyzing what she could have done differently. She realized she had given too much space to someone who gave her none. And reclaiming her peace felt liberating. One evening, while praying, she felt something unusual. A sense of lightness, as if a weight had quietly fallen off. She couldn't explain it, but she knew something shifted. Healing is rarely loud. It is gentle, like morning light. And Olivia felt morning breaking inside her. She looked at herself in the mirror with new eyes. Not as the woman Theodore left. Not as the woman who broke on her bedroom floor. But as a woman God was rebuilding piece by piece. A woman who was learning to love herself again. She changed her hair, rearranged her apartment, bought new notebooks. Not out of impulse, but out of renewal. Her life was slowly filling with color again. The fog was lifting. And for the first time, she didn't feel ashamed of smiling. On a Sunday morning, she sat in church with her eyes closed, feeling peace wash over her like a river. It wasn't the peace of forgetting, but the peace of knowing she was held by someone greater, someone who never left. Clara squeezed her hand and whispered, "You're healing, Liv. I'm proud of you." Olivia exhaled with a soft smile. She wasn't fully healed yet, but she was no longer broken. God had picked up the first piece of her heart, and while Olivia stepped quietly into her new season, on the other side of the city, Theodore's world had begun to crack, but neither of them knew that their stories, once torn apart, were about to curve back toward each other. By God's design, the cracks in Theodore's new life didn't appear all at once. They began as small, almost invisible fractures. A harsh word here, a cold glance there, a moment where he felt strangely misplaced in his own world. But small cracks eventually split walls wide open. Amelia's smiles no longer dazzled him. They felt rehearsed, sharp around the edges, like something she wore instead of felt. The laughter that once seemed charming now felt hollow. He started noticing how little warmth lived behind her eyes. The arguments grew louder and more frequent. They never resolved anything. They only fueled contempt. Amelia criticized the way he dressed, the way he worked, even the way he expressed emotions. Every word chipped at Theodore's confidence. One evening at an elite event Amelia made him attend, Theodore felt completely out of place. Surrounded by people who spoke with arrogance and egos polished like marble, he realized he didn't belong in this world of performance, a world without sincerity. When he tried to talk to Amelia privately, she rolled her eyes. "Theo, stop being so sensitive. You're ruining the mood." Her words pierced him deeper than he expected. He felt small, insignificant even. Something Olivia had never made him feel. Later that night they argued in the car. His voice trembled, not from anger, but from exhaustion. He said he felt unseen, unheard, unvalued. Amelia laughed, actually laughed. "If you want poetry, Theo, go back to your little past." That sentence hit him like a blow. She didn't mean past, she meant Olivia. The one he had left. The one who never mocked him, never belittled him. The comparison tore at him in ways he couldn't deny. As the days passed, the relationship grew colder. Amelia became distant, distracted, often on her phone. She answered messages with secretive smiles. She turned her screen away whenever he entered the room. Theodore felt dread coil in his stomach. One afternoon he walked into the apartment early. He heard her laughing in the bedroom, a laugh she never gave him. He didn't need to open the door to understand. His chest tightened with a pain sharp enough to steal his breath. He stepped back quietly, the truth burning through him. Amelia came out moments later, startled to find him home. Her expression shifted. Guilt, annoyance, then arrogance. "You shouldn't come home unannounced," she said coolly. Theodore felt something inside him break completely. It was the final confirmation he had refused to see. That night he drove aimlessly through the city. The glowing lights blurred past his windshield. His hands trembled on the steering wheel as realization settled in. He had traded love for illusion, and the illusion had betrayed him. He parked in a quiet lot overlooking the river. For the first time in years, tears filled his eyes. Not because Amelia hurt him, but because he finally understood how deeply he had wronged Olivia. He had given her pain she never deserved. Theodore tilted his head back and closed his eyes. The weight of regret pressed on his chest. He remembered Olivia's tears, her trembling voice, the way she whispered his name, hoping he'd stay. He had walked away from a treasure he didn't recognize. In the quiet of his car, a whisper rose from his soul. Not a prayer, not yet, but something close. "God, I don't know what I'm doing anymore." His voice cracked into the darkness. He felt the weight of heaven listen. A strange peace washed over him. Not comfort, but clarity. A clarity that stripped excuses, pride, distractions. A clarity that revealed the truth. He had become someone he didn't respect. Theodore leaned forward, hands covering his face. Memories of Olivia flooded him. Her gentleness, her honesty, her willingness to love him even when he didn't deserve it. The contrast between her and Amelia was staggering. He realized he had lost something sacred. He stayed parked for nearly an hour, letting the night swallow his shame and confusion. Then with a shaky breath he whispered, "God, if you're there, help me." It was the first real prayer he'd spoken in years. He didn't know what God would do with that prayer. He didn't know where to go next, or how to fix the mess he had created. All he knew was that something in him had shifted. The beginning of repentance had finally begun. Olivia didn't plan to go to the cafe that morning. She simply woke up feeling a little braver, a little lighter, and decided to step outside for fresh air and a warm drink. The small cafe on the corner felt safe, familiar. She walked inside without imagining destiny waited behind the door. The place smelled of caramel and roasted coffee beans. Soft music played in the background, blending with quiet conversations. Olivia ordered her drink and found a seat near the window. She opened her journal, ready to write something hopeful, but her hand froze before the pen touched the page, because the door opened, and Theodore walked in. Not the confident man she once knew, but a version of him she had never seen before. Tired, lost, heavy. His eyes scanned the room casually until they found hers. For a moment, neither of them moved. Time didn't slow. It stopped completely. Olivia felt her chest tighten with memories she thought were gone. Theodore swallowed hard, visibly shaken. He hadn't expected to see her. Not like this, not here. His first instinct was to look away, but something stronger made him take a step forward. A quiet pull he couldn't resist. Olivia looked down at her journal, heart racing in a way she wished it wouldn't. She wasn't ready for this. Not emotionally, not spiritually. But running would only break her all over again. So she stayed still, breathing through the storm. He approached slowly, almost cautiously. When he stopped in front of her, his voice came out soft, uncertain. "Olivia, hi." Her name and his voice reopened a door she wanted to keep closed. She lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes. There was no anger in her expression, only distance. A distance formed from pain, growth, and boundaries built in silence. "Hello, Theodore," she said calmly. Her tone nearly brought him to his knees. He pulled the chair across from her, but didn't sit until she gave a small nod. The moment he sat, the air shifted. Not romantic, not nostalgic, but heavy with everything unspoken. "You look different," he said quietly. Olivia didn't know whether to thank him or ignore it. She chose something in between. "I've been healing," she replied. The words struck him harder than she realized. Theodore lowered his gaze, ashamed. "I didn't expect to run into you," he murmured. Olivia's tone remained steady. "Life has a way of surprising us." She didn't offer more. He didn't deserve more yet. There was silence for a moment. A silence that carried everything they once were and everything they could no longer be. Theodore opened his mouth, then closed it, searching for words. He had rehearsed apologies, but none felt worthy. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. The words were raw, real. Olivia felt them land in the fragile spaces of her healing. But forgiveness is a process, not a moment. And she wasn't ready to let his remorse rewrite her progress. "You hurt me deeply," she said gently. Her voice didn't shake. It held truth and strength. Theodore inhaled sharply, eyes glistening. "I know. And I regret it every day." The sincerity in his tone unsettled her heart. She closed her journal slowly. "I'm not in a place to revisit the past," she said. "I'm finally finding myself again." Theodore nodded, understanding more than she expected. "I don't want to disrupt that. But he couldn't hide the longing in his eyes. Not romantic longing, not yet. but the longing of a man who had discovered the weight of his mistakes. He looked at her like she was something sacred he had shattered, and Olivia felt the heaviness of that grief. She stood up, offering him a soft, guarded smile. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Theodore." Her voice trembled just slightly, enough to show she was human. He rose too, breath unsteady. "Olivia, I didn't realize what I had until I lost it." She held his gaze, eyes gentle but unwavering. "Sometimes God allows us to lose what we misuse," she said. Then she walked past him, heart pounding, chin lifted. Theodore stood frozen, watching her leave, realizing that losing her once was a mistake, but losing her twice might destroy him. The meeting at the cafe didn't leave Theodore in peace. If anything, it awakened something heavy and undeniable inside him. He replayed every word Olivia said, every quiet expression, every boundary she set. Her strength unsettled him more than her rejection. For days, he fought the urge to reach out. He didn't want to rush her or hurt her again, but the silence between them felt like a punishment he deserved. Still, his heart refused to let her go so easily. Regret has a way of making the past feel unbearably present. He started with something simple, a message he never sent. "Thank you for talking to me." He typed it, deleted it, typed it again. Every version felt inadequate. Eventually, he closed his phone and sighed. Meanwhile, Olivia lived her days with quiet intentionality. She prayed more, breathed deeper, walked lighter. But after seeing Theodore, she felt inner waves she didn't expect. Not because she wanted him back, but because his presence had stirred pieces she thought were healed. Clara noticed immediately. "Liv, are you okay?" she asked softly. Olivia nodded, though her heart felt noisy. "I just wasn't ready to see him." Clara squeezed her hand, offering strength through silence. The next week, Theodore gathered courage and walked toward the church Olivia attended. He didn't go inside, not yet, but he stood across the street watching people enter. He wondered if he even belonged there anymore. He wondered if God wanted anything to do with him. When Olivia stepped out after the service, she saw him instantly. The shock flickered across her face but quickly faded into composure. She approached him slowly, guarded but calm. "Theodore, why are you here?" He swallowed hard, nervous in a way he'd never been with her. "I wanted to talk," he said honestly. "Not about us, just about life, about the person I've become." Olivia held her breath. His humility felt genuine, but sincerity wasn't the same as restoration. She nodded toward a bench nearby. They sat with a cautious distance between them. The city hummed softly around them, as if giving space to their unfinished story. Theodore exhaled shakily. "I made a terrible mistake," he began. "Not just leaving, but the way I left. The way I broke you." Olivia's eyes softened but remained steady. "You didn't just break me, Theodore. You broke yourself too." His gaze fell to the ground. He nodded slowly, visibly affected. "Yes, and I'm trying to understand why I became someone I'm not proud of." Olivia listened quietly, recognizing the sincerity, but not confusing it with readiness. "Healing has a pace, and hers wouldn't be rushed. I don't expect forgiveness," he added, "and I'm not asking for a second chance." Olivia tilted her head slightly, uncertain. "Then what are you asking for?" His throat tightened. "I'm asking for the opportunity to grow," he whispered. "To become better. To face what I've done without running from it." Olivia felt a quiet ache rise in her chest. Not for the man he was, but for the man he was trying to become. She clasped her hands together. "Theodore, I'm not the woman you left behind." He looked up immediately, eyes searching hers. "I know, and that's why I admire you even more now." Olivia's heart trembled, but she stayed firm. "I'm setting boundaries. she said gently. We can talk. We can be civil. But nothing more for now. Theodore nodded, accepting the line she drew. He didn't want to destroy her progress. He wanted to protect it, even if from himself. When she stood to leave, he rose too. Thank you for giving me this moment, he said. Olivia offered a soft but resolute smile. Take care of your heart, Theodore. God might still have plans for you. Those words enveloped him like a fragile light. As she walked away, her steps were steady. No trembling, no hesitation. Only clarity. She didn't belong to the past anymore. She was walking toward her future, and God was holding her every step. Theodore watched her until she disappeared around the corner. Instead of despair, something unexpected filled his chest. A gentle, painful hope. The kind that didn't promise her back, but promised the beginning of his transformation. Olivia had been feeling exhausted for days but ignored it. She pushed through work, through classes, through everything. Healing had given her strength, but life was still heavy. One evening while leaving the library, a wave of dizziness hit her so suddenly that she stumbled. She steadied herself against the wall, breathing slowly. Her vision blurred around the edges. A cold sweat formed across her forehead. She tried to whisper a prayer, but the weakness in her body drowned out her words. Clara was out of town that weekend. Her family lived hours away. For the first time in months, Olivia felt truly alone. She looked around, searching for help, but the campus sidewalk was nearly empty. Her knees buckled. She grasped her phone, trying to type a message. Her fingers trembled so badly she could hardly unlock the screen. Fear crept into her chest. I just need someone, she whispered. And as if heaven itself had heard that fragile confession, a familiar voice called her name from behind. Olivia? She turned slowly, dizzy, weak, breathless. And there he was, Theodore. He had been driving nearby, returning from an appointment, when he saw someone who looked like her leaning against the wall. Something in him jolted and he pulled over without thinking. He approached with concern written all over his face. Are you okay? He asked, voice trembling. Olivia tried to answer, but her legs gave out. Theodore caught her before she hit the ground. Hands steady, movements gentle, as if holding something precious. Hey. It's okay. I've got you, he murmured. Olivia felt too weak to protest. She let him help her into his car, leaning her head against the headrest, trying to steady her breathing. Theodore buckled her seatbelt carefully. Every action was tender, slow, respectful. No assumptions, no intrusion, just concern. What happened? He asked softly. Olivia shook her head, fighting the spinning in her vision. I think it's exhaustion, she whispered. I haven't been sleeping much. Theodore's jaw tightened with worry. Why didn't you call someone? His voice cracked with the pain he didn't hide. I didn't want to bother anyone, she murmured. Theodore exhaled shakily. You could never bother me, Olivia. The sincerity in his tone startled her. She looked away, overwhelmed. He drove her to the nearest urgent care clinic. The whole way there, he kept glancing at her, as if making sure she was still breathing. Olivia felt strangely safe, a feeling she hadn't associated with him in a long time. After some tests, the doctor confirmed it. Stress, exhaustion, dehydration, overwork. Nothing life-threatening, but a warning her body could no longer whisper. It had to shout. Theodore listened intently, arms crossed, concern carved deeply into his expression. He asked questions Olivia was too tired to ask. He stood beside her like someone who truly cared. Someone changed. When they left the clinic, the night air was cool and soft. Theodore offered her his jacket without hesitation. Olivia hesitated for a moment but accepted it with a quiet nod. The warmth settled around her shoulders like comfort. "I can take you home," he said gently. Olivia didn't want to depend on him, not again. But tonight wasn't about the past. It was about human need and unexpected mercy. "Okay," she whispered. During the drive, they didn't speak much, but the silence between them felt different. Not heavy, not painful. Just honest. A silence full of things God was quietly mending. He walked her to her door, stopping a respectful distance away. "Olivia, I'm glad I was there," he said softly. She met his gaze, tired but steady. "Maybe you were meant to be," she replied. Neither of them knew it yet, but this night had changed everything. Olivia woke the next morning feeling fragile but also strangely grateful. Not because Theodore had been there, but because God had shown her she wasn't alone. Healing often arrives wrapped in unexpected people. She spent the day resting, letting her thoughts drift in gentle waves. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Theodore's worried expression, the sincerity she once believed he didn't have. That evening, as the sunset painted the sky in soft gold, Olivia stepped outside for fresh air. The world felt quiet, tender, almost sacred. She sat on a bench in front of her building, breathing in the calm her soul had long needed. Then she saw him. Theodore stood across the street, hands in his pockets, hesitant, unsure. He wasn't there to push, only to check if she was okay. Olivia approached slowly, her steps soft against the pavement. Theodore's breath caught when he saw her. "You shouldn't be out here," he murmured. "I needed air," she replied gently. They stood in the fading sunlight, both shadowed by memories, both illuminated by possibility. Theodore swallowed hard. "Olivia, can we talk?" She nodded and they walked to the nearby park. The evening breeze rustled the trees as if nature itself leaned in to listen. They sat on a wooden bench, a quiet distance between them. "I want to say the right words," Theodore began. "But I don't deserve the privilege of choosing them." Olivia's heart tightened. For once, his voice held no pride, only truth. "I broke the best thing I ever had," he whispered, "and I chased something that emptied me." He looked up, eyes shimmering. "I'm not the man you loved, but I'm trying to become the man God wants me to be." Olivia felt tears fill her eyes. Not because of his confession, but because she knew it was real. She had prayed for clarity, for closure, and now God was giving her both. "Theodore," she said softly, "you hurt me in ways I never spoke out loud." He lowered his head in shame. "But I also learned who I am without you." Her voice trembled with strength. He looked at her, heartbreaking. "I don't want to destroy your healing." "You're not," she whispered. "You're showing me how far God has brought me." Her honesty softened something inside him. He wiped his eyes quickly, as if afraid she'd see the depth of his remorse. "I'm not asking for you back," he said. "I'm asking for forgiveness because I can't carry this guilt anymore." Olivia inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but God had been rebuilding her heart for this. Not to erase the past, but to redeem it. She reached out, placing her hand over his. Theodore froze, breath unsteady. "I forgive you," she whispered. Not for him, but for herself. Her heart felt lighter than it had in months. Tears streamed down Theodore's face, raw and unrestrained. He covered his mouth, trying to breathe, overwhelmed by the grace he didn't deserve. Olivia's presence felt like redemption itself. After a long silence, she spoke again. "I don't know what the future holds." Her eyes met his, gentle but honest. "But I'm open to letting God decide the next chapter." Theodore nodded, too moved to speak. They walked back slowly, side by side, not touching, not yet, but connected by something deeper than emotion. A story God himself was rewriting. It wasn't a perfect beginning, but it was a holy one. There are moments in life when God gently gathers the broken pieces we thought were lost forever and shapes them into something we never imagined. Olivia didn't receive her healing because Theodore came back. She received healing because God met her in the place where her world had fallen apart. Long before Theodore's repentance, long before the apology, long before the reunion on that quiet night, God was already working. He was already pulling her out of the pain, already restoring her identity, already rebuilding her heart piece by piece, not for Theodore, but for her. And Theodore, he discovered that running after illusions only leads to emptiness. He learned that pride destroys and truth rebuilds. He learned that losing someone who loved you purely is one of the heaviest consequences a soul can experience. But he also learned something deeper. When a heart finally bows, God lifts it from the ashes. Their story didn't end in betrayal. It didn't end in heartbreak. It didn't end in separation. It ended, or rather, began again, in the presence of a God who writes redemption into chapters humans ruin. Two souls once torn apart found themselves walking side by side again. Not because the past was erased, but because the future was rewritten by grace. And this is what Redeemed Hearts is all about. Love purified by pain, restored by heaven, and guided by the God who never abandons. Olivia healed, Theodore transformed, and together, with trembling steps and renewed hope, they let God lead the rest of the story. Because when God restores, He doesn't return things the way they were. He returns them better. If this story touched your heart, don't leave yet. Subscribe to Redeemed Hearts so you never miss the next story of love, faith, and redemption. Leave a comment below telling us which moment moved you the most, and share this video with someone who needs hope today. Because here every story reminds you, God still writes second chances.